Here's to whiskey kisses, the peaty taste of sin.
Greetings, whiskey folk. Welcome back to Drinking Out Loud. I'm your host, as ever, Adam Bradshaw, and we have a very special episode here, a very special unbottling, because the Arrival has arrived. The prophecy has come true, and someone else very special has arrived. Calum Rae has come all the way. Actually, I assume from the accent and from the fact that you work in Edinburgh, you are actually Scottish?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, cool. Yeah. All the way from Scotland, good. For the Victoria Whisky Festival, for the big launch over here. Yeah, nice.
Super excited about it. My first time in Canada as well.
Really?
So yeah.
Man. Sorry, in the background, we've got Kelly and Rob, who most of you will be familiar if you've been watching my SNWS videos. Have you taken him for like poutine and all of those things yet? No. With this time, don't worry. We will Canadianize you.
I'm working my way through the list of things.
I'm sure I've got a bottle of maple syrup in here somewhere.
He's experienced proper winter, though.
Yeah. Oh, perfect. Yeah. You don't get those in Scotland compared to here. No. I'm assuming you were in Calgary just before?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a shocker, isn't it?
Yeah. Like the moisture being drawn from my lungs is not an experience I'd had before. So, you think Scotland's cold, but it's just miserable as opposed to cold. Yeah.
I remember my first day when I moved into Canada. I moved here from Australia, weirdly enough, in between. And the day I left Melbourne, it was 38 degrees. And I landed in Toronto and drove up to Orillia, Ontario, where I was going to stay for a while. And with the wind chill, it was minus 41. So it was like a near 80-degree swing. It was quite a shock. And I learnt one of my new favourite words from Canada that I don't know if you know yet. Snotsicle.
No. But I think I've come across a few, I have to say that, yeah.
Ah, beautiful. All right, so what do we have here? So we have the Arrival, which, as you might have guessed, is the first whiskey from Holyrood. They have arrived. And again, if you are familiar with the videos that I put out here, you may have come across Holyrood in the past because I've talked about them at length several times, especially when it comes to some of the gins that we've had from them. I'm a huge fan of the Height of Arrows and some of the other gins we've had in the past. We've had some Scotch Malt Whisky Society gins, some of the spice stuff come through. And I've been thoroughly impressed with everything I've tried from them. And also thoroughly impressed with the distillery itself, because Holyrood is one of very few Scottish distilleries I've actually visited, which still feels weird. I lived there for like 5 years, and I only actually visited one distillery when I lived there. I was a poor student.
Yeah.
The only thing I could do was get a bus to Glenkinchie, and that's about it.
Yeah, and that's...
Holyrood wasn't there for me at the time. Where were you 20 years ago?
Yeah, well, to be honest, I'm sure that's something we've probably all asked ourselves a couple of times as well, and had loads of people coming in that have asked the same thing as well. So it's a nice thing to be part of this blossoming distilling scene in Edinburgh, and I'd like to say kind of leading the charge on a lot of it as well. It's really refreshing.
And distilling in Edinburgh, in a sense, never stopped because there's always been grain whiskey being distilled there. But malts, it's a resurgence, right? And you guys are leading the charge.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Edinburgh's always been a beer town. That's been the kind of thing it's known for, which is...
Oh, Caledonia. I miss Caliady.
Yeah, that's it. Like, everyone, as soon as you mention it, like, instantly everyone has that sensory memory just triggers thinking of beer in Edinburgh. So it's probably a good thing is that's led into a lot of the kind of ideas and the things that we run with at Holyrood as well. Is we're kind of like bridging that gap between the beer that everyone knows Edinburgh for, but leading this new kind of wave of distilleries that are coming through as well.
Absolutely. And in terms of beer and brewing in Edinburgh, obviously you guys have a huge link to that in some of the programs that you run. But for those who aren't familiar with Scottish beer, you should be. It's fantastic. And I'm still confused as to how Scottish style beer hasn't come, the hipsters haven't joined onto it over here yet. I'm waiting to see like Phillips make a 60 shilling or something. It's not happened yet, but at some point. Scottish beer culture is obviously, what else are you going to do in Scotland in the middle of the winter in the 1800s? You're going to drink beer and whiskey. And Old Reekie is called Old Reekie for a reason.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's hilarious as well. A lot of Scottish beer culture, as you sometimes would expect from Scotland, was all about one-upping what was coming out of England quite a lot of the time as well, which is, the pettiness that is still strong to this day. But I think it's really been cool to kind of see those styles develop, and then now how we can bring them into whiskey as well.
My grandma, who was from Leicester, born and raised in Leicester, she almost disowned me when I told her that when I came back from Edinburgh after moving there for university, that I actually prefer Sweetheart Stout to Mackeson Stout.
Yeah.
It was a troubling Christmas.
That's a controversial statement I had the same thing. A lot of my family is actually from England as well. I'm like a perfect 50-50 split. And you get some heated debates around Christmas time once the beers come out and the different kind of spirits come out, and then all of a sudden it's the line of divide is very strong sometimes, you know?
And I think you guys, I mean, obviously whiskey is very much a Scottish thing. There's some English distilleries and some getting very good. I actually bought a bottle of whiskey from Derbyshire when I was back home for Christmas. I've not tried it yet. I'm a little worried, to be honest, but we'll see. I might do it on the video. We'll find out what it's like. But you guys came out strong, challenging England to their gin game, I think. So
Yeah, I mean, that's it. And I think it's quite cool as well that, you know, obviously England's going through, you know, a kind of new sort of setup in terms of having all these new distilleries, and I think they're actually quite similar to ourselves in being experimental, and there's a lot of good kind of sister distilleries that we've been finding as we've been kind of putting ourselves out there. They're getting in contact and being like, we love what you guys are doing. It's, you know, we're rooted in Scotland, but you know, our ideas feel bigger than just Scotland sometimes as well. And
Totally.
it's about, you know, there's so much great whiskey around the world now that, you know, we need to make sure that Scotland's still at the forefront of that. And with us, you know, being luckily with Rob and Kelly kind of pushing it from the top, is that we can be creative and experimental and make sure that it feels fresh and new while also maintaining what we all love about Scotch. So
absolutely.
Yes.
And
great.
you're perfectly situated for that because, you know, Scotch whiskey is like a global cultural sort of connection. And you're basically in the gateway to Scotland. Like, if you don't go to Edinburgh and you go to Scotland, there's something wrong with you.
Yeah, your flight's been misdirected.
It's like,
yeah.
who like, I guess you could fly into Glasgow, but if you don't catch that train, that's one thing that Canada is screwed up on, is good intercity public transport. There's so many ways to get from Edinburgh to Glasgow, it's not even funny.
Yeah.
Trying to get to Nanaimo from Victoria, literally driving, that's it.
Right.
Yeah, I guess you could get the helicopter. Gets a bit pricey.
Yeah, I think that's outside my price range, if I'm totally honest.
All right, so normally I would read the bottle and tell you everything that I'm learning from the bottle, but I'm not sure if we necessarily need to do that, because I think you can probably do a better job of explaining this whiskey than the label can, because the label's only got so much room.
I'll do my best. You know, it's. I think you can see from the style of the bottle as well that we again are really trying to tip our hat to that brewing heritage as well. So we've got the brown glass bottle, which is not something you see kind of too often. And it's a real tip of the hat to the Baileyfield Glassworks, which was situated near where the distillery is, and was responsible for producing beer bottles for loads of the breweries that were in the city. You know, you go back like 100 years and there was breweries all over Edinburgh, and a lot of them were getting their glass bottles made at the Glassworks not far from us. So we wanted to kind of keep that going. And then also with the label that we have there, it is quite small. And the idea was that it's a kind of, again, tip of the hat to the fact that we are situated in an old railway station. The old Innocent Railway is where our distillery is based. It's the old store where they used to take coal from Edinburgh to Dalkeith and back the way. So it's supposed to be like a train stub, is kind of the idea with this.
And for people in Victoria, a train is a bit like a long bus that's on a track. And
then the liquid itself is... it's been really cool for me to kind of come on board a little bit later. You know, I've not been with Holyrood since the start, and it was really great to see how much we've evolved even in the time since I've been there, but in the time that Holyrood's been going. And this liquid is a really good example, contrary to a lot of the messaging that we put out there, of this is what we can do when we're in a more traditional kind of mindset. So it's 100% distilling malt that we have in here, and just distilling yeasts. You know, we've done lots of experiments with specialty malts, heritage malts, all kinds of crazy yeasts. If we can get our hands on it, we tend to like to use it. But this is us really showing what we can do in the maturation space. We put loads of new make out into the world to sort of show what we were doing. And, you know, we love to show our working. If you ever see a bottle of our new make, we have our gravities on there, our wash ABV, the yeast we've used, how long it's fermented. Like, we are geeks, so we like to appeal to the geeks in that way as well. But this was a really cool chance for us to show what we can do in the more traditional space before we start showing all the really kind of weird and wonderful stuff that we've been working on.
Totally. And I think it's a very important thing that a lot of distilleries seem to be sort of missing, in a sense, of having that kind of product that you can compare the weird things to. Like, if you're doing brewer's yeasts and like weird extra long fermentations or whatever your thing that you're doing is to make it special, how do you show the consumer what that's done to your whiskey without having something without that's directly comparable? Yeah.
And it's great as well because it can really illustrate, you know, like we put a lot of emphasis on the spirit that we make, you know, those raw materials that get us there. But it's also a really great way to show what happens in maturation as well, because some of the spirits that we produce is new make, and then you start to taste them as they're maturing, and the change is really stark. And it's really interesting to see that some flavors that were really strong in the new make kind of fade away, and other ones just explode all of a sudden into the foreground. And it's great to really be on that step of the journey now. We have a mantra at Holyrood, which is test, learn, improve, repeat. That drives everything that we do. And we're lucky enough now that we've done a lot of the kind of testing, definitely a lot of learning. You learn very quickly what's a kind yeast that's going to be easy to work with, and what ones, have me tearing what's left of my hair out, on a daily basis. But we're now really in that sort of improve and repeat stage where we're starting to see these recipes mature and really develop a life of their own. And it's a cool spot to be in now that we've been lucky enough, as I say, our founders are really about flavor first, which is great as a distiller. Definitely had yields from a mash that would have me getting my P45 in other places. I don't know if that reference translates to Canada or not.
Just to me, but yeah.
Yeah, but
you
very
can look
much.
It up.
It's just about, we want to make stuff that tastes really great when it comes off the still to allow us to change our thinking as well. We can think about maturation in a different way. I trained as a sound engineer many moons ago, and there's the old saying of, you can fix it in post. And I feel like that is the approach taken to whiskey sometimes is, it's all about the casks. And the casks are so important to whiskey, but the kind of idea of what we do at Holyrood has always been that if you can make it taste as good as it possibly can running off of the still, then the options that you have and what you can play around with on the kind of wood and maturation side changes, and it opens up massively.
Absolutely. And I think that parallel with music makes a lot of sense. Like, there's only so much that auto-tune can do.
Exactly, yeah. You're relying on a good engineer, and then, a lot of the time we're relying on a really good maturation. And, it's always the hardest working part of a whiskey business is those casks that are sitting there living away, breathing. And, it's really good to be able to not have all of the onus on them, and also see really what they do with some of the more wild stuff that we've been working with as well.
Nice. Would you like to do the honour?
Certainly can, yeah. I was just saying my own bottle of this is decidedly more empty than it was when I first got it, so it's nice to be able to try some belongs to somebody else for a change, if I'm totally honest.
I may have got a sample bottle from somewhere, who knows where, and there's drips left in it, so I'm very happy to be trying.
Well, that's good to hear.
Lovely. I like how you keep the scarf on there. That's good.
I don't know how much you're fancying at this time in the morning,
I mean, for the folks at home, we're recording this on the Thursday morning at the start of the Whisky Festival, so it's start as you mean to go on.
Yeah,
right?
That's it. I like your style, Adam. And cheers.
Pleasure.
Lunch.
That's interesting. One of the first things that comes to mind on here is a lot of those flavors that I'm told, at least, I'm not a distiller. I know quite a few, but one of the things that I've picked up along the way is that if you get like a ripe banana flavor, that's often from the yeast.
Yeah.
And there's a few other flavors that come across that way as well. And I am getting, kind of definitely a quality underlying spirit going in there with some interesting stuff going on. That's cool. And
we've been really lucky that, the casks that we were using for Arrival was, we had a nice kind of mix. It's all a bourbon barrel kind of backbone. And a lot of that was then kind of racked off into, we had some kind of Oloroso, PX, and rum barriques in there as well, which I'm a sucker for, a rum cask finish in a whiskey. So I was delighted that we had that we could play around with.
Yeah.
And the really cool thing with this as well is that when we came up with Arrival, it wasn't me in my high tower being the distillery manager making all the decisions. And I think that is something that we really enjoy at Holyrood, is it's everyone is involved, whether you are driving the truck, working in the shop, in the warehouse, everyone is involved in a lot of these decisions. And Arrival came about because myself, Rob Kelly, and a lot of the other members of the team from the distilling team, the brand home that we have, we all went together. We sat down in our little pop-up shop all around a big table, trying all the different kind of casks that we had available. And then we essentially built this together. And it really is the taste of Holyrood, because it's not just one person. It's the heart and soul, the whole place coming from everyone as well, which is a really cool thing. And, I'm I have to say I'm not one for an ego, so it's quite nice for me that I don't have to be forefront all the time either.
Also, if it turned out bad, you can get the blame.
That's it. Good. You can pawn it off to somebody else, so it's always good.
No, I like that a lot. And there's one of my favourite sayings, which, like a lot of things in whiskey, you're never quite sure where it originates, but the idea that it's not whiskey until it's shared. I like the idea that you've taken that into the creating whiskey. Yeah. It's not creating a whiskey unless it's a collaborative process.
Absolutely. It's so important to what we do because we are, a lot of the stuff we're doing is charting new ground. Mm-hmm. It's important that you don't get lost in your own echo chamber. Like you need to have people keeping you humble quite a lot of the time as well, which is really important because we want to make whiskey that people drink. Yeah. And the best way to make a whiskey that lots of people like to drink is have lots of people involved in making it. So
absolutely.
That's kind of a big point of pride for me with this whiskey is that it's really been a team effort to make this. And that is our plan going forward as well, is to really make it a collaborative effort. And, my whole distilling team and out with that as well is involved in this.
Yeah. It's respectful to the spirit, I feel. Like you've not tried to drown it in cask flavors. You can still taste what's happening underneath it. And you've not tried to mute it either. It's still got some zing. It's still got some like youthful vigorousness to it.
That's the thing, we've not got an age statement on here, but it's important that, again, the way that we like to be honest with what we do and show our working, we're kind of almost doing that with the liquid here. We're not trying to pretend it's older than it is or anything like that, because we're really happy with the liquid that we've got. And the guys laugh at me because I describe it as smashable. Like I think it's a very refreshing whiskey that, before you know it, you've definitely taken a good chunk out of the bottle and the best possible way of, it makes me want to go back for another sip. And to me, that's a good whiskey. It's that before you've even finished the glass, you're already thinking about pouring it again. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, I can see that. I've not had the opportunity to curl up with a bottle and an open fire yet because my sample bottle was quite small. It went through it pretty quickly, but it feels like the kind of whiskey that could be appreciated by a group of people that are all different backgrounds of whiskey. Yeah. Like I would take this bottle and enjoy it with my my future father-in-law, who has only tried a dozen or so different whiskeys. And he's not particularly picky, but he likes things that are a little bit more on the less challenging side. Yeah. Let's say. I tried him with some of the heavily peated stuff.
It's always a hard sell, that, isn't it? Like you almost have to, find the route into that. We were actually talking about this at dinner last night. My girlfriend didn't like whiskey before I met her. I've managed to indoctrinate her quite well. Arrival's definitely helped sort of lure her in, if you will. But next challenge is the peated side of things. But it's all about how you kind of bring somebody into that world.
I feel the peat thing's interesting because a lot of people who first get into whiskey latch themselves onto peat and feel like there's nothing outside of it anymore. Yeah. And I think what they fail to realize is what they're actually drawn to in a peated whiskey isn't the smoke flavor itself. It's the concentration of flavors. It's the volume of the flavor. Yeah. And there's other ways to get that. And this is very quaffable. It's very approachable, but it's not timid. No. Right?
We're bold. We're like I say, we love what we do. We're not going around saying we're the best in the world. We're just really proud of what we do. And I think that's what we tried to bring across with this liquid. And I think I would like to say, again, don't want to blow my own trumpet too hard, but I think I'm really happy with the fact that, as you say, I feel like this is a really accessible whiskey. But also we've been lucky enough that we have, as I say, absolute super whiskey nerds coming in and really digging what we're putting down here. And that's the key thing as well. I've always made the joke that my dad is my kind of like litmus test on things. He won't even look at a whiskey if it's not got 10 or above on the label and things like that. And he's, a man of simple taste, but it's great that these spirit like Arrival is good for kind of smashing those kind of preconceived notions and what a good whiskey is. It must be this, it must be that. We want to kind of lead that charge of let's just taste it and enjoy it, and if people love it, great. And if they don't, well, we're going to have something really good alongside it on the shelf, hopefully, that they will like. And that's really what drives us as well.
And I think more so than ever, it feels like there's a massive try before you buy mindset in the whiskey drinker. Yeah. Like a lot of people are not especially with this looming economic whatever's going on, a lot of people don't want to waste money on a bottle that they end up not liking. So getting out there and going to places like the Victoria Whisky Festival, which we're very grateful to have you here for, And getting people trying it is key to getting those preconceived notions out of people's minds.
Yeah.
Because every single whiskey geek that is drawn to this because of the geeky side of it is then going to, if they pick up a bottle, they're going to share it with, half a dozen or so of their friends who aren't as big of a whiskey geek, who are then going to have that positive association with it. Yeah,
you want that passion growing. I mean, we're the same at the distillery, it's my favorite thing. So the distillery is right in the heart of the city. We're surrounded by residential buildings and flats. And my favorite thing is, quite often we're drafting out after a mash, we're standing outside and somebody's walking past with a dog. And they're like, oh, what are you doing there? And you start chatting to them. And before you know it, you can see them walking along the path, and they come to the courtyard, into the shop, and out they go with a bottle. And we love that thing. We're all very passionate about what we do. Trying to get me to shut up is kind of the hard part. And that's what's great. We want that passion to go into the consumer's mind as well when they're buying stuff from us, that we want them to be like, you've got to check this out, and we want that excitement and that buzz. Because at the end of the day, it's why we make whiskey, is, all those good stories. They're remember that time we drank X and X happened? That's the cornerstone of every good anecdote. So Absolutely. If a few more of them are mind that time we had Arrival and X happened, that's a really nice thing for me to think about that happening out in the world. And we just want to sort of translate the passion that we have as much as we can out there.
Also, I assume this is a relatively broad thing across Scotland. It wasn't just in the place I worked in. But one of the ways that I got into whiskey in the first place, I worked at a little folk music pub, the Royal Oak.
Great pub.
It's awesome, isn't it?
Love it.
I was bartender there for 3.5 years or so.
Right.
And one of the things that used to happen is that traveling folk musicians that came in for a one-off concert or something, it was tradition at the end of the night, after everyone else had left, and we had, lock the door. That they would get the bartender a glass of whiskey from a distillery close to where they're from and tell them a story about it.
Cool.
So that's how I got into whiskey, is from people from all over Scotland sharing stories about the whiskey from where they're from.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping that will now happen with everyone that's, stayed in Edinburgh, lived in Edinburgh, taking this whiskey outside and telling their own Edinburgh stories along with something from the place.
Yeah, that's the dream for me, is that I was born in Edinburgh. I grew up in Fife across the water, which is controversial sometimes, but it's
Kingdom of Fife.
Yeah, that's it. The mighty kingdom, the mighty Fife. But you say that outside of Fife, and all of a sudden people give you a side eye and things like that. So it's great for me to go back to my home and really have this new kind of world of whiskey opening up. And we're so lucky that we've got ourselves, but there's so much other things happening in the city. They're all just adding to the buzz. And if we can be at the forefront of people's minds when they now come to Edinburgh for whiskey, then that's a massive win for me. And it's the capital city, and Scotch is the big thing. So why is there not more distilleries in Edinburgh?
Absolutely.
That's the kind of thing that I think you find yourself asking, and I'm sure Rob and Kelly did, which is why we have the distillery we have.
And you mentioned earlier, I think a key word where a lot of distilleries kind of worry me, they get trapped into it, is the echo chamber. Right. And I feel like you guys are perfectly situated to negate that, because you can't walk a block in Edinburgh without some kind of whiskey happening in some way, whether it's a sign on a window, an advert on a bus going past, a guy drinking it from a flask. But I always get worried when I meet distillers, especially, who don't drink other people's whiskey. It's what do you mean you only drink your own whiskey? That's a little worrying.
Yeah.
And I know that obviously Kelly and Rob have had thousands of different whiskies, I'm sure, from their time with the Scotch Malt Whisky Society and just in general. Obviously the rest of your team are very ingrained in the whiskey culture, I assume.
Yeah, absolutely. We're really lucky though that, again, a lot of the distilling team is all people that are there purely because of the passion for what they do, which is really great for me. I never in my wildest dreams thought I would be in the whiskey business, yet here I am, and I think most of my distilling team is kind of like that, and it's really refreshing that the love of whiskey is what has us there, and it's why we all love working there. I've got a former landscape gardener / Scottish Taekwondo instructor, a furniture maker, a medieval history student.
Excellent.
I've got a whole mix of people there that the only thing that really unites us is we love making whiskey, and that creative act is what gets us out of bed. Certainly me, I can't wait to get in the morning, and I'm barely home a lot of the time as well, because every time you're like, well, let's just work on this. And that passion goes throughout. And we're lucky enough that we have Heriot Watt in the city as well, which is, you know, well known for its brewing and distilling degrees. And
I feel like half of the distillers in Canada did a course at Heriot Watt.
Yeah, and it's great for us. You know, we have the joke that like that side is so important as well as the people there on passion. And we were talking about this last night again, and we have a joke in the distillery that you're either a cowboy or an astronaut. And I feel like we've got a great mix of astronaut and cowboy. You've got the people that get stuff done, and you've got the quiet thinkers. And I think it's really key for us that we have a nice mix of that, not just in the distilling team, but across the business. And that's kind of what builds it all up.
Did you go to Heriot Watt yourself?
I did not, no. So my story was from pretty humble origins. I, as I say, trained as a sound engineer. I was a roadie for a little while with some extreme Swedish death metal bands, which is a weird segue into whiskey. But I actually, I got into this purely from, I was a packaging assistant temporarily for Christmas at a distillery in Fife, and just labeling bottles, and filling beer bottles and putting on corks and gin bottles and things. And then it was really easy to sort of get a passion for it when you see the people in production that were so enthused with what they were doing. And very quickly, I became a guide, tour guide, loved telling people about what we were doing. Gave that up and went back to the warehouse because, you know, I think after a while you get a little bit sick of the general public sometimes. You got to be really made for that kind of line of work. You know, you're either a people person or you're not. And I think I've got better at it, but I retreated back to the warehouse. But then luckily enough, I became a brewer, was my way into whiskey. And that was just fascinating. You know, I had a really good mentor who was basically... he had a small handwritten flavor thesaurus, which was his way of like, if you want this flavor, here's the things you need to use. And that's always inspired me in what we do. And going from there, I was making beer and then got the chance to come and make whiskey and never looked back ever since. And it's been a nice little journey, and I feel like I'm hopefully just getting started as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's like a modern day Bessie Williamson story.
Yeah, I'll go with that. Yeah, I'll take that analogy.
Hey, if you can reach the heights of Bessie Williamson, that's a good thing.
I was going to say, I'll be a happy man.
So what kind of pastimes would you advise people indulge in whilst drinking this whiskey? Like some whiskeys I feel like are the perfect TV whiskey because you don't have to think about them too much. Yeah. Some take a little bit more attention. Like for me, I think I got an answer for this. I'd love to hear if you have. What would you like to do whilst drinking this? So
it's a kind of an interesting one. Yeah. Don't worry, I will. I think for this, it's quite an interesting one because we released it in October, but I've always found this to be quite a summery whiskey. Like for me, this is the kind of one that I can imagine. You know, you're in the back garden during the summer. You've just finished the barbecue, and somebody's cracked the bottle, and that's one of those ones where you look at the clock and all of a sudden 5 hours is gone and you're like, I should probably go home. And then you keep going for another 2 hours. That's how I've always seen this. It's got a lovely kind of freshness. It's still very warming and works well as a fireside whiskey as well. But for me, there's so much life to this spirit that I think just, for me, it evokes like summer nights. You know, somebody's got a boombox going in the back and everyone's just sitting in the garden chatting away. For me, this is like a chatting whiskey. You know, you drop in and out of inane random conversation, but every time, you know, within the hour, somebody goes, it's quite good, by the way. That's how I see it. You know, I've had plenty of really good whiskies like that. That's my favorite kind is one that's a conversation starter. I love a good TV whiskey as well. It helps, you know, you can just turn the brain off and enjoy it. But my one for that is like the Balvenie Caribbean Cask. Oh yeah, that's my TV whiskey. Come home after, you know, a day at work.
Relatively linear. It does one thing really well. Yeah, you don't have to think about it.
No frills, which is kind of me all over. I would like to say. So I think that it's good for that. But yeah, for me, this is really like, you know, not the party starter, but it's the one that's going to make it a good party. Is kind of how I see it.
Nice. I like that.
What's your read on that? The opposite?
No, not at all. I mean, I guess mine is you can do whatever time of year you like. But I think this would be a good board game whiskey. Yeah. Like you take a turn, you do your thinking, you do your things, you wait for everyone else to go, and whilst you're waiting for everyone else, you're enjoying a few sips. And then you take a break, and then it's your turn again, and before you know it, you just keep going through it. And you probably get to the point where, you know, I could probably win the game with this hand, but I'm not going to, just so I can keep going.
Yeah, I have to say I have been in that situation as well. My, when I lived with flatmates, we were quite board game geeks as well, and this has definitely had a cameo appearance there. So
nice. I'm thinking this would be a good Carcassonne whiskey.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It ties into that sort of feeling like some sort of medieval baron type vibe quite well. We actually have a thing we used to have in the flat. We would drink out of small glasses.
Nice.
Tiny glasses, so you feel even more like some sort of old king or something like that. Very stupid, but that's very much us all over,
Oh, brilliant. So, obviously, this is brand new. Are you planning on keeping this recipe going forward, or is this kind of a one-off thing you're at?
No, the thing with what we're trying to do is that our approach is very iterative. So we want to keep making something that's exciting and new and bringing people in. Now, are we to say that if something's incredibly popular, we're not going to make it again? No, because, it's a shame if somebody really likes a whiskey that they can't ever get it again. But we kind of like that idea as well. Again, borrowing from the kind of craft brewing world, it's really interesting for us to have a release. It goes out, people can enjoy it, get the buzz going, and then we can maybe come out with something that's a spin on it, a riff on it, or something completely new. And I think it's key for us is that we don't want to just focus on one really good flavor. We want to focus on many. And like I say, it's all about having a whiskey for everyone is the dream. We've been stuck in this world for a long time with whiskey that there's this idea that it's, old men by the fire drinking it with their cigars. And I really like to be a part of throwing that out the window. And whiskey should be for everyone. And the best way to do that is to have, liquid that appeals to loads of different palates. It's all subjective. Your favorite whiskey I might hate, my favorite you might hate, and I think that's the joy of whiskey is that you get that conversation going. Somebody goes, "What? You don't like that? I can't believe it," and that's what it's all about. So for us, it's really about pushing forward and just trying something new. And I like to call it mad science with a purpose. We're not just throwing things at the wall and hoping they stick. There's a real intent and a real ideal behind what we do. But we want it to be versatile. We're lucky we have an incredibly versatile kit. You've been to the distillery yourself and seen we've got really tall stills, which normally if you're going by, just looking at it, people instantly be like, well, I know what your character of your spirit is like. It's going to be, delicate and fruity because you've got those tall stills. But because we have so many factors that play into our production and the DNA of the distillery, we can kind of dispel that notion as well.
You've got something funky with the line arm, don't you?
Yeah, so we've got the kind of downward gradient on the line arm, but we've also got a purifier in there as well. That we can do lots of cool stuff with. Now, I'll be honest, we're only just scratching the surface on that one. That's kind of the next few phases as we go, is that we've worked really hard with these raw materials and seeing what they do. And now it's about really digging into our distillery itself and the process and seeing what we can do with all this learning and change it up. The purifier is great. We have all the settings named after old beer styles, like the wee heavy, the 80 shilling. Again, amazing. We're, very open about our love for beer, and we can then play around and, we can have the purifier on full pelt and we can, strip it all back and have it super light and delicate. Or we can have it not on at all, and we can try and keep a bit of the kind of oily, dirty character that we get because we run our stills quite hard. Now, part of that is we want to be good neighbours. We're in the middle of the city. We can only run for a certain amount of time. But it's also, I'm a big fan of short, dumpy stills that give you a nice, heavy kind of character. And it's great that we can play around and really move. We're a very versatile distillery. And what I love is, we can get set challenges. One of the ones we've had in the past was, we were like, what would our distillery what would we make if we were on Islay? So we got some Islay heavy peat. We played around with some of the purifier settings, and we're sitting there trying to replicate these great Islay distilleries. And it's nice that we can, again, show our geekery, sort of, wear it on our sleeve and be like, we just love a lot of different types of whiskey. So where can we pull inspiration from and really go with that? And that's the next stage for us is digging into our distillery itself and seeing what we come out with. So, nice. And that will completely change the character of the spirit. We're going to hopefully have, like I say, something for everyone is my dream.
Yeah.
And that's where we're going.
I really enjoy the creative side of everything I've seen at Holyrood. There's one thing as part of my background is I'm a graphic designer by trade as well.
Right.
And I actually went to Heriot Watt to study mathematics
cool.
weirdly as well. I wish I'd done distilling.
Me too.
Unfortunately, I didn't do chemistry at A levels. So, But there's one thing I've always lived by is that restrictions breed creativity. And if you set certain restrictions on different projects, the results can be incredible. And one of the things that I love about your gin is you've got that restriction of like the limited 3 botanicals, and then you're like, what else can we do with those 3 botanicals? How can we go outside of this? And you started like roasting the juniper, and it's like, let's just put more of the botanicals in. Let's try less of the botanicals. And that one restriction ended up giving creative juice to like 3, maybe even more now, different gins. I think is awesome.
That was brilliant for us because, again, I always say we're not gin distillers. If you ask me or any of the guys, we make whiskey, but we're whiskey distillers who make gin. That's how I'd like to describe it. And it's been really cool that when we kicked off with Height of Arrows and the idea was bringing whiskey thinking into gin, we limit ourselves to those 3 ingredients, but then we were like, well, where else can we go if we keep that line of thought going? So as you've alluded to, the Height of Arrows Heavy, which is my personal favorite, we took the juniper, we got it roasted, a coffee roaster, much like we have our roasted
have they forgiven
specialty
you? When I was there, apparently they were...
We had to give them quite a few bottles of gin to make up for the fact that we, to use a Scottish term, knackered the machine pretty badly. But yeah, it's great to have that, parallel with the work that we do with roasted specialty malts. And then going forward, we have our Bright, which is, I like to call it cask strength gin almost. We've got it really like strong level multi-shot, but we're just cutting it back with water. So it's really bright and just sparkling basically. And then we went really sort of down this hole that's led us to our Height of Arrows Funk that we did, which was
I'm not familiar with that one.
Okay, well, this is cool. So we took the juniper that we used for the charge alongside the sea salt that we used from the Isle of Skye. We put that in a homebrew bucket with a bit of lemon, and we let that naturally ferment. So again, bringing in the fermentation side of things that we know and love in our whiskey world into gin. It goes up to about 1 or 2% ABV. We charge that in, and it's this lovely, funky, very estery citrus gin. And again, it's just about drawing all the things that we love out of whiskey and moving it into other parts. And it's really cool to be in that creative space. And like you say about limitation breeds creativity, I've always described, Scotch whiskey as this box. We are a protected category for good reason, but it can sometimes feel like it stifles innovation.
How can you break it?
Yeah, our job is to get to the edge of that box, and then somebody slaps your fingers and you come back the way. But it's all about what we can do in that space. And as you say, it's almost more freeing to be more creative because you look at the pieces you have and you think, what can we do with this? We've dug down into malts, and like I say, we've done loads of work with just your bog standard distilling malt, which is serving its purpose. It has all those flavors that we all know and love, but drawing from the brewing world, all of a sudden we can use things like chocolate malt, black malt, crystal malt, all these things that make these great styles of beer, going back to Edinburgh's culture, Scottish red ales and like all these kind of like Scottish like sort of malt liquors that were made in the past. And we can traipse through all these kind of history books and pull recipes. And then the yeast side of things as well, we can work with our distilling yeast to get us that lovely yield, but we've tried pretty much everything we can think of. We've got yeast suppliers who will let us know the minute they have something new. And, I think it's really cool that 99% sure that some of these were like the first people to distill because we're like, yeah, we'll try it. And we've tried, loads of different types of brewing yeasts.
Have you tried that beard yeast yet that you can...
Not got that far yet.
There's a vineyard in California, I think.
Yeah, I was reading about that one. I was like, I don't know if that's maybe a step too far, but we kind of like that idea as well, and like we've, used Japanese sake yeast, we've used tequila yeast, we've used like all kinds of wild stuff to see what happens with it. My favorite was we sourced a sourdough starter that dated back to the time of the Black Death.
Okay.
Tried that. Some of the most bizarre spirit we've ever made, but very cool. It's like a liquid sweet bread kind of flavor coming through, which I'm very excited to see how that comes along in cask. And again, it's all about playing with what you have and trying to get the best and the most out of these things. And I think that's what's cool about distilling in Edinburgh at the moment is there's this real push for that kind of innovation happening and working with what we've had for, hundreds and hundreds of years, but seeing what we can do slightly differently. And I think that, again, all comes from what Rob and Kelly and David Robertson, our other founder, like laid down right at the start was like, let's make some cool whiskey. And that's what drives us, And
I'm really looking forward to seeing where this journey goes. And if you guys want to get in on the ground floor and start the journey right at the beginning. The Arrival has arrived at the time that this video has been uploaded. You can come and buy it at the Strath in store, or of course online at strathliquor.com. And even better, you can come and try before you buy. We've got a bottle cracked open in the store. Turn up, ask for a sample. We will gladly give you a glass, and you tell us what you think of this whiskey, because I'm excited to see how it goes down. And in terms of some of the weirder, stranger things that Holyrood does, I'm very excited that you're one of the distilleries that has fully gone into the whole single cask program.
Yeah.
As a fan of independent bottlings and single cask whiskies, I love it when official bottling single casks programs pop up like this, and seeing the crazy things that can come up. And would you like to try a Holyrood that you've probably not tried?
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm always looking for
you probably
it.
tried at some point in the process. But probably not fresh from the bottle. There you go.
Yeah, nice.
That's the other one to try. You want to join us, Rob?
Sure.
Yeah, pull up a chair. We'll put you in the middle of it.
Yeah, I'll let you do the honors on this one, I think.
All right. So this is very exciting. This is a very, very early sneak preview of a cask sample, because the Strath has actually bought 3 casks of whiskey. We actually went and visited them. That's the reason, one of the reasons I visited the distillery last year. We also went to the warehouse, which was super cool. And I'm not going to say where it is, don't worry.
Yeah.
I'm sworn to secrecy on that. Although, honestly, I wasn't really paying attention in the cab ride anyway. So, but yeah, it's quite the warehouse you've got going there. And so we've got 3 casks going in 3 different types of sherry. This is the one that we chose to bring out for a sample. It's an Amontillado cask. Filled on either 7th of January or the 1st of July. I'm not entirely sure. One of those two.
Yeah, I think that'll be January. I think we're going
cool.
with the British date set up there. Yeah.
Excellent. In 2022. So it's bottled quite recently, so it's probably close to 2 years now, which is kind of cool. 58.41 is its current standing, and if I remember correctly, this is using some of the brewers' barleys.
Yeah, so we would have been using a few specialty malts. I think back then as well, I believe potentially a bit of brewer's yeast in there as well. I'll have to say it's before my time, but it's great to see. This is my favourite part of my job now, is getting to look at the stuff that was made when I wasn't there and just trying it and seeing that cool stuff. And again, that feedback loop starts to grow, starts to build. And yeah, you're going to pick up some really cool specialty malt notes in this one.
Nice. And also, I just want to mention, how often on these videos do you notice me actually finish a whiskey? The Arrival's gone.
That's music to my ears.
All right. Now we'll pour a 4th glass for the hidden person at the back as well, and I'll figure out how to open this bottle. Also, very familiar looking bottles, I have to say, for someone who might enjoy independent bottlers. Does that come up often?
Yeah, now and again.
Actually, I think I've got one right there.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, it's a classic for a reason. That's what we go for. But no, I mean, the single cast thing that you touched on there is so cool, because again, you really get to see all those things we've talked about in terms of the types of malt, the yeast, and the cask just perfectly in tandem, and it's a real snapshot of like what can be happening. Mm-hmm. And the fact that it's not fully fledged, we've, as well as putting out new make, we've put out a lot of aged new make as well to really illustrate that kind of journey. And I think that's been very cool for me, not just working there, but just being as a whiskey fan, to see the kind of sneak peek of things as they go and seeing it develop. And we hope that everyone that's been with us from day dot can kind of see all of that move and carry on, basically.
Nice.
This is always the most exciting moment. So
we don't intend to release this anytime soon, don't worry. It's or do worry, I guess you're probably looking forward to it. We have 3 casks, and the idea, so long as they're tasting ready at the time, was to release 1 at 8, 1 at 10, and 1 at 12. And we'll see if that comes to fruition, but that's kind of the vague plan. And I got the chance to sample all 3 casks to see how they're coming along. And I was incredibly surprised to find that the Amontillado was kind of feeling the most mature already. That felt strange to me. I've not had many Amontillado casks, but they're normally a little bit more delicate in their effect.
I think the nose on this is great. For me, it's like your sticky toffee pudding, kind of heavy dessert. It's
sticky toffee pudding with amaretto all over it.
Absolutely.
Good amaretto
too.
Not that
hungry,
Serrano
actually,
stuff.
now I'm thinking about it.
You'll be hard pressed finding a sticky toffee pudding. Right? Union Club, maybe, actually. Mm. Oh yeah, that's coming along nicely.
Yeah.
That's even better than when I tried the sample before. Wow. It's got this nice sort of caramel chocolatey thing going on in the background there.
Yep.
There's a real strong base note from the kind of chocolate malt that's kind of sitting in there. It just anchors a lot of the flavors together, which is something that we've really enjoyed finding as well, is that the kind of, the storm that we sometimes create of flavor, you have this nice kind of lighthouse in the middle that you can kind of latch onto a lot of the time, especially when it's a little bit younger.
Honestly, it's kind of hard not to say just pull it at 3, to be honest. It's going to be really hard being this patient. When they send me a 3-year-old sample, I'm going to cry, I think.
Got some nice leather notes coming through.
Mm. Mm. Now, as soon as you said leather, I put leather and Edinburgh together, and it reminded me of the aromas of one of my favorite shops, which I don't know if it's there anymore. There was a vintage clothing store that had just tons of old leather jackets right in the grass market.
Yeah, it's still there.
It's still there, nice.
Armstrong's. Yeah, absolutely. They've got another one very close to our distillery, one street down.
Brilliant.
So yeah, like that's a proper good memory for you there. That's like sensory snapshot of Edinburgh, definitely.
Yeah.
I love this. The texture of this is really cool as well. You're almost chewing on it, which is really nice. I think that's been a cool thing that we found with a lot of these experiments, is that we're not just working on like flavor, but texture is a huge thing as well. Like the stuff that we start to get from some of these specialty malts is really changing how it feels when you drink it, as well as how it tastes, and that gets me super excited. We've done a lot of work as well with clear and cloudy wort as well. So again, taking from the kind of brewing world a little bit on that, and that allows us to really play around with texture and layer these things together as well, which is something I'd never heard of before I came to Holyrood, and I was lucky enough to kind of inherit those ideas. And I feel like this is really great for texture, like it's just like super sticky and luxurious, and again, you're almost chewing this, get a knife and fork out and you can eat it like that,
Totally.
It's great.
So it's kind of a funny thing. So I'm featuring this maybe at a tasting that I might be doing soon, maybe. And I didn't realize until I was putting together the tasting map for it. So last year we had 5 different single casks coming out, and there was a bit of a theme amongst them. There was only one of them that wasn't sherried, and I think 3 of the 5 of them were peated as well, which is kind of wild. And I didn't realize that of the upcoming projects that I've got coming on now with casks that I've kind of got signed on to, all of them have a brewing theme going on. Because we've got 3 with you guys, we've got 2 with Westland that are about to arrive, and we've just signed off on a cask from Phillips as well, from just down the road, which is a brewery that has just started making whiskey as well.
Right.
So I think that's a good theme to hold on to, isn't it?
Yeah, it's nice. It's permeating a little bit as well. I mean, I'm biased, like I said, I used to be a brewer, so it's cool seeing that come over. But I think it's definitely a great thing that is happening, is that kind of cross-pollination that's happening, because it's only going to be good for both. You're seeing the big rise in, whiskey barrels being used to put beer into as well, on the kind of inverse of what's happening with the whiskey industry. And I think that's really an exciting time, because, again, all you're getting is more flavour opportunities to kind of pop up. And
I think borrowing from different backgrounds within the whiskey industry is just really helping it evolve in a weird and wonderful way.
Yeah.
One of the things that in my recent trip to Europe, I tried my best not to really have anything that I could drink at home, and I was trying to all the local things, right? So I didn't really have any Scotch at all when I was there, to be honest. I think I had Glenlivet on the plane, that's about it, because I didn't go to Scotland this time.
Yeah.
But one of the things that I did really enjoy exploring was Belgian whiskey, which is coming a long way. And there's a lot of traditional old school Belgian breweries that are starting to make whiskey now.
Yeah.
And even one step further, I bought a bottle home of Filiers, which is an old school Geneva distillery that's been making Geneva for like 300-400 years.
Right.
And because Geneva is a malted barley base that's then botanicalized, they already know what they're doing. They have 10-year-old whiskey out now from that background as well.
That's very cool.
Right? So seeing all of these different people coming on board and doing whiskey projects with different backgrounds is kind of fun. And it's nice to see that happening in Scotland as well, and not just in the weird outreaches of the world like Belgium.
Yeah, that's it. Like, again, like I say, it's you got to bring it back to the roots, and we don't want to get left behind either. There's so much good world whiskey that, like, don't think we're in danger of being left behind, but you always have that slight fear. So it's always good to still be mixing it with the new interesting stuff.
You can never guarantee anything. You can never rest on your laurels. Look what happens to the Irish whiskey industry, right?
Although,
it's coming back.
The world, the bottle selling for a fair whack recently.
That wasn't the bottle. That was the Fabergé egg that came with the bottle. Come on now. Wild. Nice. Well, thank you very much for sharing this bottle. It's very exciting to share it with you guys, and Kelly as well. And we'll be sharing this liquid with all of our Dram Association, well, not all of you, but some of our Dram Association members quite soon, and again in close to a decade. Wonderful. Thank you so much for joining us. It's been absolutely wonderful having you here. Rob, you've been the silent onlooker for a lot of it, but you're one of the people most to thank for bringing these whiskies over here, as well as Kelly.
Yeah.
And it's I really look forward to the future of Holyrood. It's gonna be fun. Are you going to ever make a beer though?
I'll let you answer.
We've got enough on our hands.
Just as a one-off.
I can wipe my brow now,
No, I don't see us doing that anytime soon. And I mean, beer's not we play with a lot of the beer themes, of course, but there's so many great breweries out there that are already doing great things. So we don't need to step into that space.
Fair enough. You let the beer fully evolve into whiskey.
We love doing collaborations with the local breweries too.
Oh yeah.
We've done lots of those. So yeah, that's all good.
Nice.
Yeah, we'll just be fans from afar and get inspired by them and bring it into whiskey. That's
perfect.
That's the way.
Yeah, get the local breweries in, give them some whiskey, they'll give you some beer. Happy days.
It's the best trade.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, well, we'll see you on the next one. Thanks for joining us. On with the festival, I guess. It's going to be a wild weekend. You don't know what you're in for.
I don't think I do, but I'm looking forward to it.
Cool.
Yeah.
See you next time.
Thanks.
Your way